God versus Nature: The Conflict Between Religion and Science in History. Chapter 15. Conclusion. How does the history presented in this book relate to the philosophical issues of Chapter 4? That chapter identified three philosophic axioms: existence, consciousness, and identity. These can be stated as propositions. Existence exists, or something exists. Consciousness is conscious, or there is awareness of something which exists. Existence is identity, or to be is to be something. The deepest philosophic root of the conflict between science and religion is metaphysical. It lies in two opposing views of the relationship between consciousness and existence: the primacy of existence versus the primacy of consciousness. The primacy of consciousness, in its religious form, holds that a divine mind is the ultimate reality and source of explanation. This is the view that God created the universe. Given this view, the question, "What then created God?" is not considered a valid question. God is the starting point. The primacy of existence holds that existence, a causal reality, is the ultimate reality and source of explanation. Given this view, who or what created existence is not a valid question, since existence is the starting point. It is improper to ask for the cause of existence as such. Causes are part of existence. Our primary contact with existence is provided by our senses, which form the base on which we use logic and concepts to understand the world. These elements, the senses, concepts, and logic, are the key components of reason. As we have seen, these philosophic ideas have dueled throughout the history of Western civilization. Science was born in the first predominantly secular society. Ancient Greece was the first culture in which the primacy of existence was largely accepted, especially in Aristotle's philosophy. Science ground to a halt in the highly religious Christian society of the Dark Ages, in which the primacy of consciousness held sway in intellectual life. Science made a partial comeback in the fundamentally mixed society of Aristotle and Allah, and then science evaporated when this society reasserted its Islamic roots, with an Asharite theology explicitly committed to the primacy of consciousness. Aristotle's philosophy was rediscovered and became popular in late medieval Europe, in large part thanks to Thomas Aquinas, and this led to the Renaissance. European Christian culture then acted as a carrier for the Aristotelian view of the significance of this world. Late medieval Christian culture contained two contradictory elements: the primacy of existence and the primacy of consciousness. The Renaissance set the ground for such scientific thinkers as Copernicus, Kepler, Bacon, and Galileo, the symbol of truth standing up against authority. As we saw in Chapter 7, the infamous clash between Galileo and the Church was indeed a clash between science and religion, in spite of historians' claim to the contrary. During the scientific revolution, the new thinkers mentally changed gears and reduced the role of God in the universe, even as they reasserted their religiosity. Newton identified the fact that hypotheses not grounded in evidence are not worth even considering, thereby unintentionally undercutting the basis of religion. The new science of geology then turned against the biblical account of the creation of the world in Genesis. This seriously undermined the Bible, the supposed voice of God's consciousness. In the 19th century, Darwin discovered that natural selection was the basis of evolution. This was a powerful refutation of the popular field of natural theology, and it led to the reevaluation of man as a purely natural being. In Chapter 12, we saw that Kant's philosophy drove a wedge between reason and reality, enabling religionists to follow their faith with impunity, defending themselves with the claim, "reason doesn't apply here." In Chapter 13, we saw how living life with morality and purpose is entirely compatible with a secular philosophy of reason. Finally, in Chapter 14, we saw how valuable modern industry is to our current and future well-being. Unfortunately, the modern environmental movement, which should be focused on the human environment, is infected with an anti-humanist, quasi-religious ideology. Religion and modern physics. In the 20th century, several developments in modern physics and cosmology have inspired some religionists to claim scientific support for religion. One of these is the discovery of evidence for a Big Bang that occurred 10 to 15 billion years ago, creating an expanding universe continuing until today. What caused the Big Bang? That is a question that we may never answer. But the claim that a consciousness is the cause is entirely arbitrary and leads to the follow-up question: what created this consciousness? Another development from physics has led to the finely tuned universe being offered as a sign of God's design. A number of non-religious physicists, in order to explain this so-called fine-tuning, have unfortunately felt compelled to posit an infinite number of universes, with each having different values of the fundamental physical constants. We are fortunate enough to inhabit a universe with the right constants. But there is no actual evidence for any universe other than this one. The idea of many different worlds is entirely arbitrary. Why do these constants have the values they hold and not different values? The intellectually honest answer for the scientist is simply, we don't know. Perhaps we will know someday, as science has explained so many previously incomprehensible phenomena. Maybe we will never know, but we must bear in mind that ignorance about the natural is never evidence for the supernatural. Science and religion in the 21st century. Since the 19th century, there has been a widespread decoupling of science and religion, but there are still significant areas in which clashes continue. In school systems throughout America and Europe, the war over Darwin rages on, with increasing numbers of schools deciding to completely omit the topic of evolution, the core of modern biology, in order to avoid controversy. In medicine, the field of medical ethics has been heavily influenced by religious ideas, affecting such issues as abortion, the use of stem cells, and end-of-life decisions. Influential leaders of the environmentalist movement continue to predict imminent climate catastrophe and damn human civilization as a plague, instead of promoting honest and open discussion of how mankind can best flourish now and into the future. As long as people have commitments to both religion and to the comforts of modern technology, they will try to reconcile science and religion, no matter how contradictory the attempt. As Douglas Murray points out in his book, The Strange Death of Europe, today's dominant secularists have no inspiring values to offer. A recent atheist bus slogan in Britain tells us, quote, "There's probably no God. Now stop worrying and enjoy your life," unquote. Murray responds, quote, "The question of how we are to enjoy that life is answered only with, however you see fit. Who knows what will step into this void," unquote. Atheism itself is merely the rejection of God. It does not indicate any positives. What we need is a full-scale movement in support of a philosophy of reason. We need those who are committed to reason to confidently promote their ideas and inspire people to live their lives to the fullest, to achieve eudaimonia. Until such a movement occurs, we can expect religion and other irrational movements to remain dominant forces in shaping the future.